All right. Truth before the truth. Just for the future reference, if you find this time capsule, uh, there's a thing going on with, it's called hip hop. It's a musical genre. And it's not called the flunk genre yet, but I guess that's hopes. Everyone's hopes are still up that something will happen with it. This is the tragic story of hip hop, the flunk genre, because you're gonna look back, and the main reason I'm doing this is because although I should write it down and thoroughly explain, but I'm not going to because it's not that hard to figure out. So if you're looking back to our history and you find this time period in 2022, 2020. The musical genre hip hop isn't an actual genre of music. And why is it not an actual genre of music? Well, there's two reasons. One reason is the biggest, and let's first talk about how it started. How did it start? You got an MC and you got a beat and you got a rhyme. So first off, why do I rhyme and why do I use beats? Well, I'm a bum. I work the lowest paying jobs. There's a website where you can buy beats. When I first got into it, it was the best way for me to be isolated and still write things down, in rhyme form. And so I bought beats from someone, and there ended up being a website a few years ago that I jumped into so I could have more versatile of sounds. So that's why I buy beats, or I would fix these. I've already fixed one of these problems with the hip hop, and I would fix the other one as well if I had the money and time. And I probably will in the future. Hopes are still up. So this is the tragic story of hip hop. The first thing that I fixed already is the lyrics. They don't match. They aren't considered lyrics when you compare it to all the other genres in the entire world, from the past to the present and probably the future. It's it's not. There's no clarity in it. It's just they call it rap, but it doesn't make the definition of rap. It's just kind of like the people who started trying to rap stayed in that stage where they keep trying to rap, and everyone in hip hop is just socially condemning each other unawareingly. They're not aware that they're condemning each other. Literally condemned. When you condemn a house, it's condemned and no one's in there. So they keep each other like socially tied, and they keep talking about hip hop, and they're literally they've drowned in it because they don't know that it's about these two words. When the hip hop is for writing rhymes, which means there's more lyrics in the full amount, in the entire amount of a song compared to all the other genres. So you have more words and time to explain. And they call it 316s. You got 16 metronome taps, where you have they call it 16 bars, and you have 16 to 32 rhymes in one 16. So you got all this time to explain something more, and no one's actually explaining it. Yes, there are a few real songs, but because hip hop is such a tragedy, when there's a real hip hop song or a real rap song, you just put it outside and you consider it rock and roll, because rock and roll is kind of like considered the true pop music, and pop is just pop. Hip hop is just hip hop. Pop didn't fail because they have real lyrics, and the song can last forever. But there's only a few rap songs that ever even made it, and we don't know if the artist made it on accident or not. Because when I didn't know these things, I made it on accident, and so the two things that make it a tragic story, first is the lyrics, and they're not explaining anything really. They're just kind of like not at that stage where you're the stage of writing all that and explaining everything. It's explained in 2 words: sage, mana. So mana is like an essence, a source of essence, a wellspring of energy or something, right? That comes from somewhere that's like universal. Like the sun has its own mana, the sun. It's not, they think it's a living being, that's why they call it. So the spiritual essence from like a god or something has super mana, So a sage is we don't really have sages anymore, but if you look at history and uh, sages access gnosis and things that are unknown, and they stay in their hole for like years at a time, and they're writing, and they know what they're doing in their own time, not in a church, not in a sponsored by thing. They're in their own world. I mean, yeah, you can be on your own with provided for. Someone can support you. And saints were doing that. They wrote for hours. They became sages, like minor sages. Any famous person probably has so you're supposed to be writing because you have all these beats, and someone makes a beat, or you can make a beat in 5 minutes, and that beat you can revert to, and you write and write and write instead of focusing on more of the musical enhancement of a few words and a concept. So you're more explaining, you're more making the listener visualize. You can see the difference of what hip hop is meant to be, compared to all the other genres. All the other genres where they don't have all these words to express, not express or express the explanation or the lyrics of a concept or a song. So while there's all these words in all these hip hop songs, they're not really actually explaining something. They're just kind of saying the same thing over, and they used it to show the bad environments of the world, which is cool, which is fine. That's why people tolerated it. And but the thing is that the second tragic part of the story is that the instrumentals, or the music part, where you put in a keyboard and you make some sounds, the entire genre continues blacking out for the last 3 or 4, since it began, pretty much. Well, after it began, it probably began with an MC, the mic check, 1 2 1 2. They started saying lyrics or silos, like, you start thinking what's coming to your mind that's relative, like how Hollywood makes a show or a movie. It's based on a theme or a concept or something, a few words that mean something literally, and then touch base with the reality. So someone started mic checking, in the background, and then they had the dancers, and there's a whole theme behind hip hop and how it began. And it was a kind of a rebellion out of the system, the whole dancing, all the break dancing and stuff. It has deep meaning to what it actually means. You're breaking out of the system control, and that's what it kind of means, because your hip is hopping out of it, So that ended quickly as it became popular, and it just became beats and rhymes. So the big tragedy is that around when that happened, is that people, or whoever started it, it became proof that no one's paying attention. And it took me a decade after initially paying attention to many things. I had already known bigger truths than this before I actually fully identified it as the source of a problem that's affecting the whole world still, because there's many children and kids and young adults that go into hip hop and they want to start rhyming, because it's when you're not really here and you're young, you hear a rhyme and it's not as inspiring as a rock and roll song, but then in that deep cold state, it's more inspiring. And there's something about rhyming that makes it that punches you with some sort of inspiration, and it gets you going, and mentally, because it's the mental, it's the more of a mental genre. So it's a flunked genre because the instrumentals, here's the big part, here's the breaking news that everyone needs to know. In the future or anything, when they look back at how sick it sounds after you hear this news, the beats have a metronome tap, and it goes t t t t. So when you put your headphones on or you put the speakers on full blast, it's just this big, it's designed where the tap is in the center of your pineal gland, your crown chakra. It's in deep into the exact opposite of how you should produce music. So every single hip hop song has that tap over and over and over and over again, to where you cannot consider it music because that tap is put there so you don't listen to it eventually. There's songs in every genre where you can literally come back after 100 years, after 5 years, after 1 year, after 30 days, whatever, that you love, and whether it's not as good as or it's better, it's still there. It's an eternal thing. But when you have all these people who are trying to rhyme, and then whoever put these samples in all these instrumental making tools, they have that tap in there, and it's right into the center. And when you turn it up full blast, and you have an actual like hearing ability, and where you can hear the music, it shows that no one can pay attention because it actually hurts your head. It just does that right into the middle of your fucking head, like that, over and over and over again. And anyone who subconsciously senses anything when they're trying to start doing hip hop, they all abandon it and they cower, and nothing ever happens. That's why there's always bands, and there's always groups, there's always genres of people, but there's never actually any real rappers or hip hop groups. It's just like some poor guy who's talking about drug dealing, and it's like an era of a new sickness is revealed. The same sicknesses evolved, and they put that tap shit in your head. So, and it's just like you're just, I don't know. It's sick, and anyone who sees it knows that it shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't treat the youth that way, to where that just because they want to rhyme, that they get kicked out of it because it can never be considered musically. I mean, you can do that all you want. You can make a tap like that and rhyme all you want, but when it comes down to depositing and recording information on a worldwide global network, to where it's possibly going to be reviewed over the next thousands of years, we're going to look at this stuff, and that's all it's going to say is that something terrible happened, and it will only be proof of how not paying attention and learning how to listen is how you make music, and not going to school to go into a computer or a studio to produce music. Because all those people still do that tap thing, and they don't know how to record music. I've made things that sound better with my voice, rhyming, just like talking to it through my phone, and it sounds better when I'm relaxed than it does pretty much most rap songs. They just, like, you can hear this loud noise of all this time these producers put into one stupid rap track, and it doesn't even sound good. They're occultically believing that the way that they're doing it and going to school for it and all that, and so you pay them money, that it sounds good, but it actually doesn't, and it hurts everyone. And it's like they're just sitting there waiting to hurt someone again. So, because they think that hurt will wake them up. But no, all it takes is information to wake someone up. When I tell someone this in person, they don't process the information. Obviously, because we are treated poorly by the rich people. They've salted the coffee recently. I don't know how many years ago, but we're basically pinned down by poisons. It's left and right. They're just chucking poisons into our bodies, and everyone's super ugly. But everyone still listens to music if they like it or not. And hip-hop becomes the most frowned upon genre. And only when someone wants to rhyme and rebel individually do they really get into hip-hop. Except for those people who think that they're ghetto, or black people think that black people are into hip-hop or something like that. But there's black people who started their own type of hip-hop where they kind of just stay over there with black people. But even then, they still have that loud tap thing in the center of your head, and it never allows it to become music. So that's the end story of hip-hop. because if I make a real instrumental and I rhyme over it, it will only be new age. And even if I use the beats that I have with the loud tap in it, it's only going to be considered new age because I figured out the other problem to where I know exactly what my lyrics are saying, and they're process information forever. Not just some like, contemporary issue thing that's like you might have to perceive it subliminally. R&B has the same tap sound as hip hop, but R&B is in between because they have songs that you can with lyrics where where singing makes words an instrument, and you can come back to it 100 years later and it's still just as good because you're perceiving the words. So that's the tragic story of hip hop, and I didn't want to write any of this stuff down. I'm sure there's probably more ways to explain it, more details about it, but once you get that loud tap in your head, it never goes away, and it's inevitably abandoned, the entire thing. And it's only evidence for the future. It's that thing you look back in history that says, what are these dumbasses doing? They're doing it on purpose because they put all these samples in across the internet for everyone, and they call it like a hi-hat or a punch note or something like that, where they push the button and it hits a loud tap right in the center of your head, and it can give you ear damage is the big problem, is the big point. You could play loud metal music and you would have more ear damage from a quiet rap song because it's in the center of your head. So think about that, and go and listen to a rap song and turn it up full blast, but just listen to that tap in the middle of your head. And if you don't have a problem with it, you're really high and it doesn't matter in the moment, or you probably eat too much junk food and there's a thing called cake and you got too much cake in your bloodstream, and it's like you can't hear something at a low volume or a high volume anyway. It's just like you just feel the rhythm and you're just like high and shit. You just feel the high. You don't know what the song's about, or you have known what the song's about and you just gave up to eat junk food so you could feel high about it, right? So it's just an eventuality of abandoning something that is futile, and that is the tragic story of hip hop. Truth before the truth.